Welcome to our deep dive into bone mechanics and mechanobiology. In this video, we'll explore the fascinating world of bones not just as static structures but as dynamic living tissues that adapt and respond to the forces of everyday life. We'll cover their basic functions, structural diversity, material properties, and how bones remodel and adapt to mechanical demands. By the end, you'll understand how bone health is maintained and why it's so crucial for movement, protection, and overall well-being. Let's start by asking, what exactly is bone for and why is its design so remarkable? Bones serve several essential roles in the body. They provide support for soft tissues, act as attachment points for muscles, and transmit forces that enable movement. Bones also protect vital organs. Think of the rib cage shielding the heart and lungs or the skull encasing the brain. Beyond mechanics, bones are reservoirs for minerals like calcium and phosphate, crucial for physiological functions. They even play a part in sound transduction and blood cell production within the marrow. This multifunctional nature makes bone a truly unique tissue in the body. During daily activities, bones experience a range of stresses, typically between 50 and 150 MPa. Interestingly, bones are generally stronger in compression than in tension. These stress levels are quite similar across terrestrial mammals, highlighting evolutionary optimization. However, bones don't have excessively high safety factors, usually around 2 to 4. This means bones are built just strong enough for typical activities, but not so overbuilt that they waste resources. Fractures do occur in nature, but this balance allows for efficient movement and survival. Like engineered structures, which often have high safety factors for critical applications, bones are designed with efficiency in mind. For example, reactor vessels or airplane wings might have safety factors much higher than those found in bone. Natural selection has shaped bones to balance strength, weight, and metabolic cost. Some bones, like the skull, have higher safety factors to protect against rare but severe impacts, while limb bones are optimized for frequent, less extreme load. This adaptation ensures survival while maintaining agility and energy efficiency. Bones come in various shapes, each tailored to its function. Long bones like the femur and tibia are designed to resist bending and buckling, providing stability for movement. Vertebrae are shaped to withstand compression along the spine, while flat bones such as the skull and pelvis offer protection and serve as muscle attachment sites. The loading modes on bones vary. Compression is common during normal activity, but bones can also experience tension and bending, especially during trauma. This diversity in form and function is key to the versatility of our skeleton. The macroscopic level, bone is non-homogeneous and porous with two main types, cortical compact and trabecular spongy bone. Cortical bone forms the dense outer layer, providing strength and protection, while trabecular bone, found at the ends of long bones and in flat bones, is highly porous and supports metabolic functions. Trabecular bone's rod-end plate structure allows it to absorb shock and distribute loads efficiently. The balance between these two types is crucial for both strength and flexibility. Trabecular bone isn't uniform, it varies by anatomical site and health status. For example, the femoral head has more plate-like trabeculae while the lumbar spine features rod-like structures. This variability allows bones to adapt to different mechanical demands. In conditions like osteoporosis, trabecular bone becomes thinner and more porous, increasing fracture risk. Understanding this variability helps us appreciate how bone structure is finely tuned to its environment and function. Many natural materials, including bone, are cellular rather than fully dense. This cellular architecture reduces weight while maintaining stiffness and strength. For instance, the combination of a compact cortical shell and a spongy trabecular core in long bones mirrors the design of engineered sandwich structures. This arrangement maximizes resistance to bending and flexure, with porosity increasing toward the center where less strength is needed. Such designs are found in other biological materials as well, like cork and coral. Zooming in, cortical bone reveals a complex microstructure. It contains vascular porosity, Haversian and Volkmann's canals, which house blood vessels and nerves. The lacuna canalicular network provides living spaces for osteocytes, the most abundant bone cells. Osteins, cylindrical structures around Haversian canals, are key to bone strength and ability to repair microdamage. This intricate organization allows bone to be both strong and responsive to physiological needs. Bone is a hierarchical material, with structure and function at multiple scales. At the molecular level, collagen provides tensile strength, while mineral crystals give rigidity. Collagen molecules form fibrils, which are impregnated with apatite crystals, and these fibrils aggregate into larger fibers. At the macro level, we see cortical and trabecular bone. This synergy between hard and soft phases enhances bone's mechanical properties, making it both strong and tough. Bone's mechanical properties are remarkable. It is linearly elastic under normal physiological loads following Hooke's law. The stress-strain relationship is key. Young's modulus, the slope of the linear portion of the curve, indicates stiffness. For cortical bone, Young's modulus ranges from 15 to 25 GPa in the longitudinal direction, about half that in the transverse direction. Bone is also viscoelastic. Its stiffness increases with strain rate, which helps absorb impact. Stress is the force per unit area within a material, while strain is the fractional change in length under load. In bones, typical physiological strains are around 1,000 microstrain, with maximal values in extreme activity reaching 1,500 microstrain. The stress-strain curve shows how bone deforms under load. Below the yield point, deformation is elastic and reversible. Beyond it, deformation becomes plastic and irreversible, leading to fracture if the load continues. Mechanical testing of bone yields both intrinsic and extrinsic measures. Intrinsic properties like Young's modulus and ultimate stress are independent of bone size and geometry, they reflect the material itself. Extrinsic properties such as ultimate force and stiffness depend on the bone's shape and size. Understanding the difference is crucial for interpreting mechanical tests and comparing results across different bones or species. Force displacement and stress strain curves are fundamental tools in bone mechanics. The linear portion of the stress strain curve represents elastic behavior, where Young's modulus is calculated. The ultimate force and ultimate strain indicate the maximum load and deformation the bone can withstand before failure. These curves help researchers and clinicians assess bone quality and predict fracture risk under different loading scenarios. Yield point on the stress strain curve marks the transition from elastic to plastic deformation. Below this point, bone returns to its original shape when the load is removed. Beyond it, permanent deformation occurs and the risk of fracture increases. Yield stress and yield deformation are important parameters for understanding bone fragility and designing treatments to prevent fractures, especially in diseases like osteoporosis. Mechanical performance of whole bones is influenced by their geometry as well as material properties. For example, the stiffness of a bone depends on its cross-sectional shape and the type of loading it experiences. Simplified models, like hollow tubes, help us understand how bending resistance and strain are affected by both the material's Young's modulus and the bone's moment of inertia. This interplay is crucial for bone strength and resilience. Bone stiffness changes with age and disease. In premenopausal females, endocortical bone resorption is partly offset by periosteal bone deposition, maintaining or even increasing bending resistance despite cortical thinning. However, after menopause, accelerated resorption and reduced deposition lead to further thinning and decreased stiffness. Understanding these changes helps explain why fracture risk increases with age, especially in women. When a bone is loaded and bending, it experiences compression on one side and tension on the other. Bone is stronger in compression than in tension, so fractures typically start on the tensile side. As the crack propagates, it follows the path of maximal shear stress, creating characteristic butterfly-shaped fragments. This pattern is important for understanding fracture mechanics and guiding orthopedic treatment. Bending tests are the most common way to assess the mechanical properties of whole bones, especially in small animal models. In these tests, bones are loaded until they fail, providing data on Young's modulus, failure stress, and stiffness. Bending causes tensile and compressive stresses, with bones typically breaking on the tensile side. These tests help researchers understand bone strength and the effects of diseases or treatment. There are two main types of bending tests, 3-point and 4-point. In 3-point bending, the load is applied at the midpoint, creating maximum bending moment and fracture at that point. 4-point bending applies load at 2 points, creating a region of uniform moment and allowing fracture at the weakest point. While 3-point bending is simpler and more widely used, 4-point bending provides more uniform loading but is experimentally more challenging. Young's modulus, a measure of stiffness, can be calculated from bending tests using formulas based on beam theory. For 3-point bending, the moment and strain are related to the load and displacement, allowing estimation of Young's modulus from experimental data. Accurate measurement requires careful consideration of bone geometry and loading conditions, as real bones are more complex than idealized models. Bending tests make several assumptions: that bone is homogeneous, isotropic, and shaped like a perfect hollow tube. In reality, bones are more complex, and these assumptions can lead to inaccuracies. For example, indirect calculation of strain may overestimate deformation and underestimate stiffness. Alternative methods, like attaching strain gauges directly to the bone, can provide more accurate measurements of intrinsic stiffness. Tensile and compressive tests are used to assess the mechanical properties of both whole bones and bone samples. Tensile tests are highly accurate but require larger, carefully machined samples, making them less suitable for trabecular bone. Compressive tests are easier to perform on small samples and better simulate in vivo loading for certain bones, but can be less accurate due to misalignment and boundary effects. Bone diseases like osteoporosis and osteomalacia affect mechanical properties and fracture risk. Osteoporosis leads to stiff, brittle bones that absorb little energy before breaking, while osteomalacia results in weak, ductile bones that deform significantly before fracturing. Both conditions increase susceptibility to fractures. Effective treatment aims to increase bone strength and decrease brittleness, often by improving bone mineralization and tissue quality. Understanding bone mechanics has direct clinical relevance. For example, rickets osteomalacia in children causes bowed legs due to insufficient bone stiffness. Increasing bone mass, optimizing bone geometry, and improving material properties can all help reduce fracture risk. Clinicians use this knowledge to guide treatment and prevention strategies for bone diseases, ensuring better outcomes for patients. Study of bone mechanics bridges engineering and anatomy. Early anatomists and engineers noticed similarities between bone structures and engineered designs, such as the alignment of trabeculae in the femur with stress trajectories in cranes. This observation led to the development of theories like Wolff's law, which posits that bone architecture adapts to mechanical demands, optimizing strength and minimizing weight. Wolff's law suggests that bone structure aligns with principal stress directions, forming mechanically optimal architectures. However, this theory has limitations. Bones are subjected to varying, often unpredictable loads, and their adaptation is influenced by both global and local factors. Modern research recognizes that bone adaptation is a complex, self-regulating process, not always achieving perfect optimization. Bone form is regulated by both genetics and mechanical loading. Genetic templates determine baseline bone size and shape, while mechanical forces drive adaptive changes. Experiments show that bones can develop and remodel even in the absence of normal loading, but their structure reverts to the genetic template. Adaptive responses, like bone spurs, demonstrate how bones can respond to unusual mechanical demands. Different bones experience vastly different loading frequencies and magnitudes. For example, the humerus of a common swift is loaded over 100,000 times a day, while red deer antlers are loaded only about 200 times during a rutting season. The direction and frequency of loads can vary greatly, influencing how bones adapt and what structural features they develop to withstand these forces. Bone growth involves both periosteal apposition, adding bone to the outer surface, and endocortical resorption, removing bone from the inner surface. During growth, the cortex thickens and the medullary cavity enlarges, increasing stiffness. Females typically complete growth earlier, resulting in smaller bones, but cortical thickness is similar between sexes. The position of the cortex relative to the neutral axis differs, affecting mechanical properties. As we age, bone remodeling patterns change. In premenopausal women, periosteal apposition helps offset bone loss, maintaining section modulus, a geometric predictor of bending strength. After menopause, increased endocortical resorption and reduced periosteal apposition lead to a decrease in section modulus, making bones more susceptible to fractures. These changes highlight the importance of bone geometry in maintaining strength throughout life. Mechanostat theory, proposed by Harold Frost, builds on Wolff's law by emphasizing strain as the key driver of bone adaptation. According to this model, bone is maintained within a physiological range of strain. If strain falls below this range, bone is lost. If it exceeds the range, bone is formed. This self-regulating system ensures that bone mass and architecture are optimized for mechanical demands. Healthy bone maintains a balance between osteoclastic bone removal and osteoblastic bone formation activity. The Mechanostat model explains how bones remodel in response to mechanical stimuli. Strains below the physiological level trigger bone loss, while strains above it stimulate bone formation. This dynamic process allows bones to adapt to changing mechanical environments, maintaining strength and function. Mechanical loading is the most effective way to strengthen bone. Adding new bone tissue to the periosteal surface increases resistance to bending and torsion. Experiments show that bone formation occurs where stress is greatest, reducing risk of failure. For example, axial loading in rats improved bone strength by 64% and resistance to fatigue failure by 100 times, demonstrating the power of targeted mechanical stimulation. Dynamic loading, such as intermittent or cyclic forces, is a much more potent stimulus for bone formation than static loading. Experiments in animals show that static loading can even decrease bone cross-section and increase porosity, while dynamic loading increases bone mass. This sensitivity to the dynamics of loading highlights the importance of regular, varied movement for bone health. Bone adaptation is dose-dependent. Studies show that bone formation is directly proportional to the magnitude of applied strain. Low strains can cause bone loss, while higher strains stimulate bone formation. There are thresholds. Peak strains above 1,000 microstrain are needed for positive adaptation, and even higher strains can further increase bone mass. This dose-response relationship guides exercise and rehabilitation protocols. Not only the magnitude, but also the rate and frequency of loading affect bone adaptation. Loading at higher frequencies, 510 Hz, is more effective at stimulating bone formation than lower frequencies. Bone becomes more sensitive to loading as frequency increases, requiring less strain to initiate adaptation. This insight is important for designing physical activity programs that maximize bone health benefits. Extended loading doesn't always yield more bone mass. There's a point of diminishing returns as bone cells become desensitized. However, introducing short recovery periods between loading bouts can restore mechanosensitivity and significantly increase bone formation. For example, a 4-hour rest between loading sessions nearly doubled bone response in animal studies. This principle is useful for optimizing training and rehabilitation schedule. Use of bone, such as during immobilization or lack of physical activity, leads to rapid bone loss. In children, lack of skeletal loading results in pencil-like low-density bones with mechanical defects. In adults, disuse causes bone loss mainly at the endosteal surface, increasing porosity and reducing strength. Fortunately, bone loss can be reversed by resuming activity, highlighting the importance of regular movement for skeletal health. Wolff's law remains a useful concept. It's now understood as a pattern rather than a strict law. Bone structure generally follows function, aligning with principal stress directions, but many factors influence adaptation. Genetics, loading history, and biological processes all play roles. Recognizing these complexities helps us better understand bone health and disease. Bone adaptation is the result of both genetic programming and mechanical forces. Genetics set the blueprint for bone size and shape, while mechanical loading fine-tunes structure through adaptive remodeling. This interplay ensures that bones are both robust and responsive to the demands of daily life, allowing for individual variation and adaptation to different environments. At the macro scale, bone development involves coordinated growth and remodeling. Long bones grow in length and diameter, with bone added to the periosteal surface and removed from the endocortical surface. These processes differ between sexes, with females typically completing growth earlier. The result is a skeleton that is both strong and adapted to individual needs and life stages. Mechanostat theory refines Wolff's law by focusing on strain thresholds that dictate bone loss, maintenance, or gain. While Wolff's law emphasizes stress and alignment with principal forces, the mechanostat highlights the importance of strain magnitude and frequency. This distinction is crucial for understanding how bones respond to different types of mechanical stimuli and for designing effective interventions. Research has shown that factors like loading type, static vs dynamic, dose, and previous loading history all influence bone formation. Dynamic high-frequency loading is most effective, while prolonged static loads or excessive duration can desensitize bone cells. These findings guide recommendations for physical activity and rehabilitation, ensuring that bone health is maintained throughout life. Summary: bone mechanics and mechanobiology reveal a remarkable interplay between structure, function, and adaptation. Bones are dynamic tissues, constantly remodeling in response to genetic and mechanical cues. Understanding these processes helps us appreciate the complexity of our skeleton and informs clinical strategies for maintaining bone health and treating disease. Remember, regular movement and appropriate loading are key to strong, healthy bones throughout life.